At L&M Fine Jewelry, we hand select our diamonds to give you the very best prices possible. Monty knows a great deal when he finds one. Find your great deal at L&M Fine Jewelry.
Your diamond destination.
Hey, what's going on, everybody? Samuel Akem here, and I'm back with another one. I appreciate you guys for tapping into yet another Tuesday video. Thank you so much. It was a super exciting weekend of college football. UC Davis and Idaho was a really good game. Like I mentioned in my video last week, Montana versus Eastern Washington surprisingly turned out to be a really good game. NAU Sac State, I think I said a little something about that game. I think I had actually picked Sac State, but that was a really good game. McNeese Weber State was a good game. It was a great weekend in college football. Things are starting to shape up. Montana State is obviously undefeated. Montana is sitting at 4-1 overall. UC Davis is 4-1 overall. Northern Arizona is 3-2 overall. Look out for them. If you guys have been following my channel, I mentioned in the offseason, they were my Big Sky dark horse. Now, obviously, it was week 1 in Big Sky conference play. There's a whole lot that still has to happen, but watch out for the Lumberjacks. They looked good. Their defense looked really good. They were getting a ton of pressure on Sac State. Sac State's offense looked a little inept. They had some turnovers, but we're going to talk about it all today in this video. Please stay tuned in. Please hit the like button. Please hit the subscribe button. Please make sure you guys leave me a comment down below, and we will get straight into it. Okay, first up, we are reacting to the Montana versus Eastern Washington game. It was an absolute shootout. 52-49, Montana walks out with the victory. They move to 4-1, 1-0 in conference. Eastern Washington goes to 1-4 and 0-1 in conference. Eastern Washington has been struggling mightily. And, you know, some of my predictions preseason were all right. Some of my predictions did not hit, and that's okay. One of those predictions was I thought Eastern Washington was going to be a top-tier Big Sky Conference team, and that has not panned out at all. Eastern Washington's defense is really struggling getting off the field at times. They don't tackle very well. Their secondary is not the best. They're giving up a ton of pass yards. They're just struggling defensively, but offensively, they can put the points up, man. And, you know, they got two quarterbacks, Jared Taylor and obviously Kakoa Visperis. Great players. Kakoa Visperis was 22 of 38, 265 yards and 4 touchdowns yesterday. No interceptions. And then Jared Taylor had a really long touchdown run where he broke a ton of tackles. He had 2 carries for 51 yards and a touchdown, that long run of 48 yards. But also, on that Jared Taylor touchdown run, that highlighted the struggles that Montana's defense is having. 49 points for this Montana defense. That is insane. And if this Montana team wants to win, I mean, obviously they can put up points. They have weapons. And I think the first couple of weeks against Missouri State, and I'm blanking on their second game, whoever they played their second game, I'm going to have to go look at it now. But Montana, the first couple of weeks, Montana against Missouri State and then North Dakota, their offense didn't really look what we've seen these last 2 weeks these last 3 weeks even. Morehead State, obviously, I think that's to be expected. They're going to run up the score. Morehead State's a non-scholarship team in the Pioneer League. I think you expect that. But against Western Carolina, 46 points, and against Eastern Washington, 52 points, that's a really good output for Montana. And I think it's something that we haven't seen in the last few years from Montana. Like last year, if you think back to that Montana team, their defense won them a ton of football games. They had a ton of hard playing players. They played with a ton of effort. 5-6 hats to the ball every time, hustling around. I mean, a bunch of guys that have been 5th, 6-year seniors that have been in the program for a long time. They played really hard. This year, the effort doesn't seem like it's the same on the defensive end of things, but like, everybody knew that this offense was going to be high octane. Everybody knew that this offense had weapons. Everybody knew that the running back position was stacked. Everybody knew that the receiver position was stacked. The tight end position had a good day yesterday. Eric Barker had 2 touchdowns. The quarterback position, surprisingly, I thought Ayat had kind of run away with the job. But after the game yesterday Fife had, I don't know, man. The coaches got a hard decision to make. Coach Pease and Coach Hout got a hard decision to make. I don't know how you go away from Logan Fife after the game he had yesterday. He was 30 for 42, 364 yards, and 5 touchdowns. He absolutely aired it all over the place. I think he had like a 70% completion percentage. Dude balled out. He balled out. And I commend him because, you know, after making it kind of seeming like he had kind of lost the job, for him to stay locked in, understand what is tasked of him, and to put up a monster game against Eastern Washington when they needed it, is absolutely ridiculous. I mean, it's amazing. Nick Osmo, 15 carries, 160 yards, a touchdown. Eli Gilman, 11 carries, 109 yards, and a touchdown. Eli Gilman is one of the top 5 rushers in the country, and this man hasn't had more than 15 carries in a game yet. He's still averaging over 10 yards a carry. He's got like 560 rushing yards on the season. He's scoring he's averaging like a couple touchdowns a game. He only had one in this game, but the man is balling out. Junior Bergen in his games back, he's really looked really, really good. He had 7 catches, 150 yards, and a touchdown. Last week, he had 8 for 99. I don't think he got in the end zone, but man, Junior Bergen has looked really good. Keelan White, 7 catches, 75 yards. He looked really good as well. Obviously, with Eastern Washington, you know who everybody's eyes were on. Efton Chisholm, 8 receptions, 170 yards, 3 touchdowns. If you didn't watch this game, you really missed out. Montana really seemed like they were running away with things late in that second quarter to go in that second half. Eastern Washington's offense was really struggling to get things going. Montana really seemed like they had because to start the game, I don't think Montana has played anybody that runs a tempo to the extent that Eastern Washington does. They go really, really fast. Not really, really fast, but they go with tempo, and they're trying to get a lot of plays in, and they throw the ball all over the place. Hence why, Kakoa Visperus threw it 38 times. Funny enough, I would consider Eastern Washington a team that likes to throw the ball a lot, and Montana threw the ball more than them yesterday. So that was really, really cool to see that Montana, because what I was mentioning is Montana's defense last year won them a ton of games. And if you look at the game yesterday, that was a game where Montana's offense had to win them the game. And then if you look at the Western Carolina game last week, that was a game where Montana's offense, I would say, won them the game. Western Carolina was moving the ball up and down the field. They had a lull kind of in the middle of the game, just like Eastern Washington did. But then towards the end, Western Carolina started to get things back going, and Cole Gonzalez was making things happen. That happened yesterday. Montana had them kind of under wraps, and they got a 17-point lead. I think they were up by 17 going into halftime, 31-14, if I believe was the halftime score. Yeah, 31-14 was the halftime score. And then, at the end of the third quarter, it was 38-21, so still a 17-point lead. But then in the fourth quarter, Eastern Washington puts up 28 points in the fourth quarter to potentially mount a comeback. Montana ends up winning by 3. They scored 14 in the fourth quarter. But, there was some big-time play calls by Coach Houck and Coach Pease, particularly Coach Pease. I know it's Coach Pease's call. He's the offensive coordinator. But I say Coach Houck and Coach Pease because I know Coach Houck has a say in what he wants to do. The special teams for Montana, the kicking game for Montana has not been the strongest. There were some times in the game where I felt like Montana was, not even gambling, because at the end of the game, Montana went for a touchdown in 4th and goal instead of kicking a field goal. The reason they did so is because a field goal doesn't do anything for them. It makes it a 6-point game. Eastern Washington was showing the ability to run up and down the field. If they don't make that 4th down conversion, Eastern Washington gets the ball. Sure, you hope you can hold them to 3, but if they score, you're down anyway. So Montana, and there was a 4th and 2 that they handed off to Xavier Harris. That was a really, really big time play. There was a 4th and 1 that they ran a play action, fake reverse, over the top shot to Junior Bergen. Big time play calls, big ballsy play calls from Coach Pease. It was really awesome to see, offense all over the place. Eastern Washington, I'm worried about them. You look at the rest of their schedule. We can go look at it right now. They have a gauntlet. They just played Montana. Next, they have Sacramento State. That could be honestly a good game after what we saw from Sacramento State. Sacramento State struggled offensively. Eastern Washington struggles defensively, so that may be a good matchup for Eastern Washington. But UC Davis, they just beat Idaho, who was the number 4th ranked team in the country. Idaho will probably drop, but Idaho didn't lose by a ton. That was a 28-26 ball game. They play Idaho after UC Davis. Then they play Montana State after Idaho. They have a 5-team gauntlet in conference play for Eastern Washington. They play Montana, next Sac, then UC Davis, then Idaho, then Eastern Washington. Then they get, it gets a little easier for them. They have Northern Colorado. They should win that by a lot. They have Idaho State. I would say Eastern Washington should win that. But if you remember that game last year, Eastern Washington against Idaho State, Eastern Washington had a really good lead. Idaho State came back and got the win against Eastern Washington in devastating fashion. Eastern Washington missed the game-winning field goal. Devastating for Eastern Washington. And then they finished with Northern Arizona, which is not a pick, which is not an easy game to win. I think by the end of the season, Eastern Washington's 1-4 right now. I think we could be looking at a 3-9 Eastern Washington team, or a 4-8 Eastern Washington team. 3-9 really is what I see, because I say they lose to Sac, they lose to UC Davis, they lose to Idaho, they lose to Montana State, they win Northern Colorado. I say they win Idaho State, and honestly, I don't think they're going to beat Northern Arizona. Based off what I saw from them on Saturday, they look really good. Northern Arizona looks like one of the top 5 teams in the Big Sky Conference right now. But the Big Sky Conference is definitely shaping up. It's very interesting where teams are rolling out, but Eastern Washington, they're struggling. And the question becomes, do they hold on to their head coach, Aaron Best? They're going to lose Efton Chisholm next year, who is obviously their best player. Kakoa Visperis is still going to be there. Hopefully, he's a sophomore. But, I don't know. There could be a lot of shakeup. Personally, a lot of people think Eastern Washington has a ton of weapons. I don't see a ton of weapons on this team. Obviously, they're able to get the ball around because I think they have a better than most quarterback. Kakoa Visperis is probably a top 3, top 4 quarterback in the Big Sky Conference. He's better than most. And then Efton Chisholm is such a difference maker. He had 3 touchdowns in this game. I mean, he's hard to cover. They move him all around the place. They get the ball in his hands. He can make things happen. He's a difference maker. But in terms of that, I don't know. I mean, they're good on offense. They're good on offense. That's what it is. They can put points up, but can they stop anybody? And that becomes the question for both of these teams, Eastern Washington and Montana. Can Montana stop anybody? When will we see a game where Montana looks really, really good off defensively? They have really, really struggled getting guys on the ground, tackling. They have really, really struggled in coverage-wise, and I think the reason that they didn't get exposed against North Dakota, because if you've looked at some of the games that North Dakota has played, North Dakota put up 72 yesterday. And honestly, I've been telling people that North Dakota game looks like a really, really good loss. And it's crazy to say a good loss, but that looks like a strong game for Montana. They only lost to that team by 3. North Dakota just beat Murray State 72-35. They beat San Diego 41-25, non-scholarship team. Murray State's a lower tier Missouri Valley's team. And then they beat Idaho State 52-28. And then obviously Montana was 27-24. And then they hung in with Iowa State 21-3. So this North Dakota team is looking really, really good. And the fact that Montana was only able to lose to them by 3 based off how their defense has looked this year, I think that bodes well for Montana, but we will see as the season goes on. North Dakota is looking like one of the better teams in the Missouri Valley, as is South Dakota, but we're not talking about the Missouri Valley today. The Missouri Valley is looking very interesting, but that North Dakota game might end up being a decent L for Montana, even though they lost. They only lost by 3, and North Dakota has looked really, really good, really, really strong. But one thing I was going to say about North Dakota is the reason that North Dakota might not have exposed Montana as much as they could have in the past game is because North Dakota didn't really make an effort to pass the ball. I think if I go back to that game, I think Romfo might have threw it like 12. What did he throw? He threw 24 times, but he was 50%, 11 for 24, so under 50% completion percentage for 97 yards and a touchdown. They really did not put the ball in the air that much. There wasn't a lot of offense, obviously, to be had in that game from either team. But, Montana and Eastern Washington, it was a pretty cool game to watch. I'll be very interested to see where Eastern Washington goes from here. Montana obviously has Weber State next week. Weber State just dropped a game to McNeese State. Clifton McDowell had 300 yards of total 300 total yards of offense. That man looked really, really good. Be interesting to see where they go from here. But, Weber State, Montana, that's who they got. Eastern Washington will go to Sacramento State. I think they do go to Sac. Yeah, they go to Sacramento State this week, so they'll play in Sacramento. Be interesting, but what do you guys think of the Montana-Eastern Washington game? What do you guys think of this Montana defense? What do you guys think of Eastern Washington's defense? What are you guys' thoughts about this game overall? Obviously, Montana got the dub. Montana was the preseason pick to win the Big Sky Conference. They are the reigning Big Sky Conference champions, so obviously all eyes are on them. I think they're winning a lot of games that they might not have won in the past just based off of, the mettle that they have, the mentality that they carry in and out of each game. But it'll be interesting to see how this Montana team carries forward. You guys let me know in the comments what you guys think about this game, and I will move on. Okay. Idaho versus UC Davis, the game of the week in the Big Sky Conference. Absolutely incredible game. Idaho did not give up. They didn't go away easy. I thought for sure when they got down by a couple of scores, I thought it was going to be a runaway from UC Davis, but Idaho fought back, made it a game. It came down to the wire. It really came down to a 2-point conversion that Idaho did not convert, but I think Idaho has a quarterback. problem. They played two quarterbacks yesterday, two quarterbacks. They played Jack Wagner. He was 13 to 25, 178 yards, one touchdown, two interceptions, two bad interceptions. I did a breakdown on that game. Make sure you guys go check that out. And then they played Nick Yosefek, who's also a freshman. I think Jack Wagner's a redshirt freshman, and I think Nick Yosefek is a true freshman. They put him in once Jack Wagner after Jack Wagner threw his second interception, they put Nick Yosefek in the game. He was 9 for 19, 96 yards, a touchdown, but he did bring them back into that game. I will say that with Jack Wagner in the game, Idaho was struggling mightily. He threw a couple of bad interceptions, one on a fourth down that, was just a turnaround, and then one on a corner where it looks like him and Dwyer weren't on the same page. He threw the corner up there. He threw the ball up there, and the defensive back of UC Davis came down with it. But UC Davis, on the other side of things, they looked good, and I keep seeing people on social media say UC Davis really looked good. I don't think UC Davis looked bad. Miles Hastings, 25 to 32, 248 yards, 3 touchdowns. They looked really good. But if you look at the stats, UC Davis lost in almost every statistical category against Idaho, and it's kind of crazy that they won this game. If you really think about what led them to win this game, it comes down to the turnovers. Idaho, I think, they threw 3 interceptions, one on a pass from the receiver. He threw it up into triple coverage, completely unacceptable from the receiver. We don't have to get into that. But then the 2 interceptions from Jack Wagner. But, UC Davis had 2 fumbles that they gave up to Idaho, so 3-2 on the turnover margin. But I just think it's, when you're playing on the road, you have to play cleanly, and, UC Davis had 1 turnover. I guess they only had the 1 fumble. They had 2 fumbles. This ESPN stat sheet is wrong because they had the fumble in the beginning of the game. No, I'm thinking of the NAU game. My fault. UC Davis only had 1 fumble, so they fumbled. Tompkins fumbled, and then so 3-1 in the turnover department for Idaho. That is not what's going to win you a game. That is not what's going to win you a game. You have to take care of the ball, especially on the road, especially in a night-ranked matchup when the other team you're playing against is very good. And I will, admit that I was wrong. I didn't think very highly of this UC Davis squad. I saw them hang tough with Southern Utah. I saw them, and obviously, matchups make fights, so this might have been a really good matchup in terms of how UC Davis matched up with Idaho. But the offensive output was not crazy from UC Davis. They were hitting receivers, they were able to move the ball, but it was a really weird game. But I really think the turnovers ended up being the difference in this game in favor of UC Davis. If you look at the total yards, 459 for 312, third down efficiency, 8 of 15 for Idaho, 4 for 13 for UC Davis. First downs, 28 for Idaho, 20 for UC Davis. They were both 0 for 2 on fourth down. Passing yards are pretty comparable, but 26 rushing yards for UC Davis. And obviously sacks play a part in that because if you look, it says, I think, what am I trying to say? Why am I blanking? Land Larson had like 40 rushing yards. He had 46 rushing yards. So obviously the sacks that Hastings took. But then just think about that. Like the sacks that he took. How many sacks did they give up? It doesn't tell us in this stats and this on the ESPN, but I have to go to the official stats for either one of those schools. But, Idaho had like 3 or 4 sacks on UC Davis. So they were getting to the quarterback. Their defense was playing decently well. It was a close game. These are 2 really good teams in the Big Sky Conference. You expect a close game. I guess historically, Idaho has struggled with UC Davis. I know historically UC Davis, I know Idaho has never won in Davis. And I think they're like 4-1, maybe 5-1 now against Davis. So Idaho has not played very well against Davis. And obviously that showed in the game on Saturday. But they started off really hot. Idaho started off 14-0 lead, and then UC Davis seemed to buckle down. They started to move the ball. Land Larson was making some plays. They tied it up. Idaho had a 17-14 lead, and then going into halftime, they had that 17-14 lead. Idaho came out, UC Davis came out at halftime getting the ball. They ran like a fake kickoff return reverse. CJ Hutton kept the ball and took it back down inside the 30. 2 plays later, Land Larson catches a touchdown pass on a wheel route over a linebacker in the end zone. Just an amazing play. They made some plays. UC Davis made the plays when they had to, and Idaho didn't take care of the ball. You got to take care of the ball, but if you look at the stats, it's crazy looking at these stats that, completion percentage, that's another thing that UC Davis won, but yards per pass, 8.2 for UC Davis, 6.1 for Idaho. Rushing attempts 34 for Idaho, 31 for UC Davis. Yards per rush 0.8 for UC Davis. Obviously, the sacks that UC Davis had plays a part into that, but 5.4 average for Idaho. Even penalties. UC Davis at home had 5 penalties for 54 yards. Idaho had 3 for 18. I mean, every statistical, even time of possession. Idaho had 32 minutes of time of possession. UC Davis had almost 28 minutes of time of possession. I mean, every statistical category. Idaho lost, but when you look at the game, it boils down to one thing Coach Hauck used to always say. If you lose the turnover battle, that's almost a guarantee that you're going to lose the game. It's very, very hard to win a game when you're giving teams possessions. I still think Idaho's a good squad. I still think UC Davis is a good squad. I do think Idaho's struggling on the quarterback department. They got a good defense. Jack Lane was the starter for a reason. If Jack Wagner was good enough to start, he would have been starting to start the season. Jack Lane, they go through training camp. They go through spring ball. Coaches have gotten a ton of film on these guys. There was a reason that Jack Lane was the starter. They have for sure missed Jack Lane. Since he's been out. I think he went out in that Oregon game, so he's been out since the first game of the season. They've struggled. Obviously, they were able to get wins with Jack Wagner. I think that was heavily weighted by their defense and how well their defense was able to play, but now they're under their third-string quarterback unless they just bench Jack Wagner to give him a break, and maybe he'll be starting, but I got to believe that Josefek is probably going to be starting this next game. I don't know. I think Idaho needs to find an answer now. They play Northern Arizona, and that is not going to be an easy game. Idaho's obviously going to be wanting to get a win. Northern Arizona is feeling high. They go to the Kibbe Dome, so that'll be an interesting game. That'll be maybe one of the games of the weeks. I think there's some pretty good games this week in the Big Sky Conference, but Idaho, Northern Arizona will probably be one of the top games in the conference this week. And then you got UC Davis going to Portland State. They should get a win there. Shouldn't be a tough game for them. But what do you guys think about this? What did you guys think about the Idaho-UC Davis game? What do you guys think about this Idaho offense? They got weapons. They got pieces. Mark Camper, Jordan Dwyer. Jordan Dwyer had a really good game, 114 receiving yards. Mark Camper had a decent game as well. I think he had like 60 or 70 receiving yards. I'll tell you right now. Mark Camper had 48 receiving yards, so 114 for Jordan Dwyer. They had 185 total rushing yards, 72 from Elijah Cummings, 55 for Nick Josefek, and then 41 for Nate Thomas. Quarterbacks didn't play great, but Nick Josefek came in and did enough to keep them in the game. It'll be very interesting to see how Idaho shapes out. Obviously, this isn't what they wanted. They fall to 3-2. UC Davis goes to 4-1, 1-0 in conference for UC Davis. Idaho is 0-1. Currently, the way things are looking, Idaho, until somebody on the top takes a loss, until maybe all of those teams in the top take a loss, Idaho is on the outside looking in of the Big Sky Conference title race, and they're going to just have to play the waiting game now. They're going to have to win, obviously beat the teams that are in front of them, hope for the playoffs, but in terms of winning the Big Sky Conference, they're going to have to hope one of these top teams loses. In terms of UC Davis, Montana, or Montana State, that's where. And then NAU, honestly, too. We will see what happens with NAU. Haven't looked at NAU's schedule. We can take a look at it in a minute. But yeah, you guys let me know what you guys think about Idaho and UC Davis. Did you guys watch the game? What are your thoughts leaving that game? What are your thoughts on UC Davis? What are your thoughts on Idaho? Where does Idaho need to improve? Where does UC Davis need to improve? You let me know in the comments, and I will move
The Treasure State University of Montana football is a way of life. Lithia Ford has long been a proud sponsor of Grizz football, and Lithia Ford of Missoula is thrilled to have several of the best Montana football seniors driving the best trucks in Montana. Aspen Sound is the premier car audio and accessory shop in Montana. Aspen Sound makes sure the boys are riding in style with tinted windows and state-of-the-art stereo systems. There's always a party in Montana. Whether you're going to a concert, a wedding, or a football game, the Montana Party Bus will get you there. Skyline Sports and ESPN MT cover the Big Sky with more depth than anyone. Check out SkylineSportsMT.com and tune in to Nuanez Now on 1029 ESPN Missoula every day. My Montana Roots and Wear Your Roots clothing is your go-to spot for the most unique and comfortable lifestyle clothing you'll find anywhere. And get your custom t-shirts to support your favorite player. From 5 local businesses who love Montana, best of luck to the Grizz as they pursue another Big Sky Conference championship.
Okay. So a little surprise this week. An upset of the number 10 team in the country. Sac State lost to UC Davis in a 34-16. Can we call it a rout? No, we don't have to say rout. It's only an 18-point game, but 34-16. Northern Arizona beats Sac State at home. They move to 3-2, 1-0 in conference. Sac State moves to 2-3, looking crazy right now. 0-1 in conference. They looked very inept offensively. Their quarterback really struggled. He threw a couple bad interceptions as well. Northern Arizona turned over the ball, though. When I was talking about the Idaho UC Davis game, I was thinking about the Northern Arizona Sac State game, because Northern Arizona turned the ball over twice, I believe. Interceptions thrown 2 by Sac State, turnovers 2 for 2. It doesn't even count the turnovers for Northern Arizona, but they definitely had 2 turnovers. There was a fumble early on in the game by I think one of their tight ends, and then there was a fumble on a punt return that Sac State recovered. But either way, oh man, I know Sac State is looking for some hope, man. I thought they were going to be really good. I don't think we've heard a lot about what happened to Caden Bennett or where he's been at, but this honestly could have just been a fluky game for Northern Arizona. They've had the propensity to upset teams. They did it to Montana last year. Montana ended up being a really good team. This could have just been a misstep for Sac State, but based on what I saw, I don't think it was just a misstep for Sac State. They did not look great offensively. And NAU, I don't think it's just a fluke for NAU. I think their defense looked really good. They were getting pressure on Sac State the entire game. I did a breakdown on that game as well. Please go watch it. It was a really good game. I mean, Sac State had constant pressure, and that's one of the reasons Conklin threw his interceptions is because, Northern Arizona was constantly bringing the blitz, constantly putting him under pressure, making him make fast decisions. I don't know what I haven't watched a ton of NAU games. I don't know what their defensive scheme is, but they were definitely bringing a lot of pressure, and it was getting to Carson Conklin, and he threw interceptions because of it. Ty Pennington completed 84% of his passes, 21-25, 240 yards, 2 touchdowns, playing a really, really clean game. Darvin Hubbard, 18 rushes, 72 yards, and a touchdown. Braze White might be one of the better tight ends in the Big Sky Conference. 6 receptions, 89 yards, and a touchdown. Long reception of 22 yards. He looked really good. Tay Lanier, 7 receptions, 69 yards, and a touchdown. Now, one thing that kind of worried me about this NAU offense is they don't seem to have, Braze White had a really good game. He looks like a really good player. He made some really big plays that were just different. He's a big guy, made a big back shoulder catch on a slot fade. He made a big catch in the end zone for one of their touchdowns. But it doesn't seem like they have a ton of weapons. None of their running backs really wowed me. Their quarterback looks like a decent player. None of their receivers outside of their tight end, Braze, really wowed me. I'm not super wowed by this NAU offense, but they have some pieces on their defense, particularly Alex McLaughlin. He's a difference maker. He's an All-American for a reason, was a freshman All-American last year. He looks really good. He flies around. He makes plays. He blitzes the quarterback. He had a sack fumble against Northern Arizona, against Sac State, which really kind of turned the tides for Northern Arizona, gave them, I think, a 20-9, so an 11-point lead up to that point in the game. But man, he's a great player. He's a great player. Great player. He's a great player. I mean, NAU, if their defense can play the way they did against Sac State only had 1 touchdown in this game. The rest of their points came from field goals. So 3 field goals and a touchdown for Sac State. And even on that touchdown, had it not been for some missed tackles by NAU, Sac State might not have scored a touchdown in this game. I mean, it was that bad of an offensive game for Sac State and that good of a defensive game for Northern Arizona. I mean, they looked really, really good. I'm very impressed with what I saw from Northern Arizona. Very, very impressed with what I saw from Northern Arizona. I think, they could shake some things up. I haven't seen the rest of their schedule. I kind of want to look at their schedule now to see who they have going forward. This week, they'll play Idaho. That's right. I mentioned that a minute ago. They play Idaho. That's going to be a really good game for them. Then they play Montana in Montana. That's going to be a good test. That's homecoming for Montana. Northern Arizona is going to be looking to play spoiler in Washington Grizzly. Then they play Idaho State. They play Weber State, Cal Poly, Northern Arizona, Eastern Washington. If Northern Arizona can get through Montana and Idaho, Northern Arizona could look at potentially being a threat for the Big Sky title. I mean, Idaho and Montana are really the biggest games for them, that if they want to threaten for the Big Sky title, they're going to have to win both of those. But outside of that, I mean, Sac State was one of those tough dates for them. They got through them at home. They play Idaho on the road. They play Montana on the road. So 2 straight road games for them. It's going to be interesting. It's going to be interesting to see how Northern Arizona shakes out after these next 2 weeks. But I was impressed with Northern Arizona. I was very impressed with Northern Arizona. Northern Arizona, they look good. They got the dub against a ranked opponent. I don't know if Northern Arizona will be ranked after that game, but they look good. We'll see how they progress over the years. Northern Arizona hasn't been super great the last couple of years. They were 5-3 in conference last year, though. So I can honestly see if they don't threaten for the Big Sky title, I could see them being 6-2, maybe 5-3 in conference, which isn't great, but it's not terrible either. So it was a good game. Montana or Sac State offensively, I think it's a struggle for them weapons-wise, too. I mean, I think both of these teams are struggling finding nobody has like a star weapon that you think of when you think of Sac State. Jarrett Gibson's a good receiver, but he's not somebody I think of in terms of like being a star receiver, somebody that you have to game plan for specifically. Even for Northern Arizona, there's not somebody on that offense that I think of that's like a star that you have to game plan for. Not at the quarterback position. I think Carson Conklin's a good player. 17 for 36 is not great. That's under 50% completion percentage, 2 interceptions and a touchdown on 162 passing yards. Not great, man. And I think another thing that might be hurting them is in terms of this offense, if this offense is shaded towards Caden Bennett and Caden Bennett's injured, which it seems like he is injured, he has an aspect to his game with his legs that he brings to the table. Not having that as a piece of this offense, because like I was saying, if you have a Caden Bennett on this Sac State offense, that's somebody who's a weapon. That's somebody who you game plan for. Not only because he can throw the ball successfully, but because he can run the ball successfully. So, trouble. Elijah Tolliver is actually a good player for Sac State. He's a weapon for them. He hasn't really balled out. I mean, he's balled out this year. He's like top 3 in the conference in rushing yards. I think he was 3rd right before this past game. But, I don't know. Sac State, it needs to figure it out. They need to figure it out for sure. They are 2-3 overall now, 0-1 in conference, and now they will play Eastern Washington at home. So that should be a good game for them. That should be a good game in totality. Sac State struggled offensively. Eastern Washington struggles defensively. Sac State has a pretty decent defense, I would say, because they gave up 1 defensive touchdown, almost 2 defensive touchdowns. So take those 2 defensive touchdowns away. That might be a 20-16 ball game against NAU. So who knows? But I think Sac State is still pretty decent defensively. But offensively, they need to get it figured out. NAU beats Sac State 34-16. They moved to 1-0 in conference. They are now 3-2. They look pretty good. Obviously, it's the first week in Big Sky Conference play, so we'll see how things shake out. But Sac State's looking for an answer. They play Eastern Washington. We'll see how they shake out as well. You guys let me know what you think about Sac State. What are their issues? Let me know what you guys think about Northern Arizona. Down in the comments, what are their issues? What do you guys think these teams do well? What do they do bad? What are you looking for most to from these teams this year? And I will move on. Okay, now I want to talk about my top Big Sky performances of week 5. Top Big Sky performances. Now, I know I'm an alum, and these were all big performances. These were all amazing performances. I'm not trying to be a homer or anything. I am a Montana alum, so, I do pay attention to the Grizz. But I do cover the Big Sky Conference, so there's that aspect as well. But there's 3 Montana guys on this list. I'm going to name them first, but there's some really good performances being had in this conference. Not a lot of standout defensive performances this weekend. Not a lot of defensive performances. A lot of offense being had in the Big Sky Conference, but I'm trying to pick the best of the best performances that I see. 150 yards plus, preferably in some of these performances. And then defensively, I'm looking for a lot of sacks, a lot of tackles for loss, a lot of forced fumbles, like making plays, game-changing plays. So number 1 on this list, you had Nick Osmo from Montana, 15 carries, 160 yards, 1 touchdown, 10.7 yards a carry. Sheesh. 2 receptions, 33 yards, and a touchdown on a tippy-toe corner of the end zone touchdown. Really good play. Nick Osmo from Montana, he balled out. He's had a couple of good games against Eastern Washington. Throughout his career, he seemed to have pretty good games against Eastern Washington. He balled out. He was a big piece as to why Montana won that game. Had a big 60-yard run late in that game to really get them down in the red zone territory to really, help Montana out. It was a really big play. Really good game from him. Junior Bergen, 7 receptions, 150 yards, and a touchdown. The man is a difference maker. Ever since he's been back last week against he really came back against Morehead State, but he didn't really play a ton. He really came back against Western Carolina, and they really made a concerted effort to really get the ball into his hands against Western Carolina, and he's been making plays ever since. He runs really good routes. He's a smooth guy. He's open always. They draw plays up for him to get him open, and he executes at a high level. 7 receptions, 150 yards. Great game from Junior Bergen. Next is Mr. Logan Fife at Montana. 30 for 42, 364 passing yards, 5 touchdowns. That is worthy of being Big Sky Conference offensive player of the week. If he doesn't get it, I don't know what's going on. I could see all three of those Montana players getting it, but, Logan Fife was the quarterback throwing the passes to Junior Bergen, so 30 for 42, 364 yards, 5 touchdowns. I mean, the 5 touchdowns alone, that is a ridiculous number, and I could definitely see him getting Big Sky Conference Player of the Week. Next on the list is Mr. Scott Trey Humphrey. Now, I might have to walk back a statement I made earlier on in the season. Scott Trey Humphrey, 27 carries, 159 yards, 3 touchdowns. He has looked as good as he did last year. I thought he was a really good player last year. I thought he looked really promising. A lot of speed, runs behind his pads, really shifty. I mean, he looks like a good player. But I mentioned that he was the best running back in the Big Sky Conference, and I don't. Okay, I'm back. What was I saying? Scott Trey Humphrey. He's looked like a really, really good player, and I mentioned earlier in the season that I thought he was one of the better running backs in the Big Sky Conference. I may have to walk that statement back. Eli Gilman getting half the carries of Scott Trey Humphrey has looked really, really. Now there was a game, I think it was against Maine. Scott Trey Humphrey had like 4 carries, like 100 yards. I mean, they're both really good. There's 2 really good running backs in the Big Sky Conference. 3, if you want to count Nick Osmo. Nick Osmo is a really, really good player, but Eli Gilman has been really balling out. Scott Trey Humphrey has been balling out. I'm trying to think about Elijah Tolliver's up there. He's a good playmaker, but the top 2 in the conference, some of the probably top 10 in the country is Scott Trey Humphrey, Eli Gilman. They're neck and neck really for me in the Big Sky Conference, but Scott Trey Humphrey had a really good game, 27 carries, 159 yards, 3 touchdowns. That's a great game. Dude balled out. He deserves his props. He's been balling all season. He's top 10 in rushing in the FCS. He's really, really good. He's been looking the part. He's looked like one of the better players in the conference, and I got to give him his props where props are due. Scott Trey Humphrey from Montana State. Great weekend in week 5. Next, we got 2 defensive players. We got Josh Kashola from Sac State. It might be Casciola, but Kashola. Josh Kashola from Sac State. Obviously, they lost to Northern Arizona, but he had 5 tackles, 2.5 tackles for loss, 2 sacks, and 3 forced fumbles. Now, I got this off the official, I think I was on Sac State's website when I got these stats. So they gave him credit for 3 forced fumbles. Got to believe hopefully they're doing their due diligence with their stats. Sometimes stats might be inconsistent, but 3 forced fumbles, 2 sacks, 2.5 tackles for loss, 5 tackles. That is a stellar performance, man. That dude absolutely balled out. It was a great to see him ball out. Obviously they got it in a loss, but he played really, really well. Josh Kashola from Sac State. Don't know much about him. Maybe I'll be seeing his name pop up more, but he had a really good performance against Northern Arizona. Last but certainly not least on this list is Northern Arizona's Alex McLaughlin. 9 tackles, 2 tackles for loss, a sack, and a forced fumble. Now, you might say that doesn't really seem like a crazy stat line, but he's a safety. 9 tackles at the safety position. 2 tackles for loss as a safety. 1 sack as a safety and a forced fumble as a safety. This man is a playmaker. All-American last year, baller, makes plays over and over and over and over and over again. He's always around the ball. He's always making plays. He knows what he's doing. Go check him out if you haven't. He's a really good player. I could see him being an all-conference player this year. I could see him being an all-Big Sky player this year. He's a great player to watch. Alex McLaughlin from NAU. Those are my top players from this week. Nick Osmo, Junior Bergen, Logan Fife, Scott Trey Humphrey, Josh Kashola, and Alex McLaughlin. Those are some top performances from this week. If you guys noticed another top performance that I didn't mention, leave it in the comments. Let me know who else had a really big game. But I feel like I do my due diligence trying to find these best games. I feel like I do my due diligence. You guys let me know if I ever miss. I'd be more than happy to hear you out. But I feel like I do a pretty good job, man. Let me know what you guys think about that in the comments, and I will move on.
Join Town Pump's Pump It Up Rewards Plus program and never pay full price for fuel again.
Save 5 cents on every gallon every day at any Town Pump across Montana.
Plus, earn and redeem points on your favorite in-store items to get free stuff with our clubs.
Stop in and pick up a rewards card. Download the Pump It Up Rewards Plus app today.
Or visit townpump.com/rewards to register and start saving.
Right down the road, pump it up. Oh, yeah.
Okay, one of my favorite parts of my video each week is my Big Sky Week 5 Power Rankings. Here we go. I'm just kidding. No, but really, like, Big Sky Week 5 Power Rankings. There is definitely some shakeup in the Power Rankings this week. Honestly, not as much shakeup as you might suspect, but there was some movement in the rankings. Definitely some movement in the rankings. Might shock some people. But based off what I saw this week, this is where I feel like all the teams should be ranked. A lot of shakeup, honestly, now that I'm looking back at it. A lot of shakeup in these rankings. Not really. I mean, I'm boosting. But at number 1, we have Montana State. They're undefeated. They have an FBS victory. They've looked the best. They beat everybody that's been in front of them. Can't blame them for that. That's on them. They could end up being 12-0. We will see. But they're 5-0 right now, and, they haven't gotten to the thick of their season yet. So they'll get into the thick of their season going forward. I can't remember who Montana State has this week, but we'll cover that in a minute. Number 2, UC Davis. They got the big ranked win against Idaho, and I know you might think, like, I basically just switched UC Davis and honestly, no, I didn't, because there was another team that was where Idaho's at, and now they're a little further down. But number 2, UC Davis, they just got the big win against Idaho. They've shown to be a really good team in the Big Sky Conference. They're 4-1 right now. They have a highly ranked win over Idaho. Montana does not have a ranked win that high. They beat a 24th ranked Western Carolina, who has not looked really great this year. They haven't really beat a ton of teams, but, we'll see how they shake out in the end of the season. But UC Davis, to me, looks like the second best team in the Big Sky Conference right now. At number 3, we have Montana. Now, Montana's kind of been hanging tough in that number 3 spot for me for the last 3-4 weeks. I think really since I've started to do these rankings, Montana has been at number 3. And I can't move them down because they've been winning, but I can't move them up because defensively, they haven't looked great. I'm ranking these teams based off what I see right now. And what I see right now is Montana is one of the better teams in the Big Sky Conference. Are they the best? Certainly not. Are they number 2? Certainly not for me right now. They're number 3 for me right now. They look good. They don't look the best. I need to see improvement defensively to put Montana higher. UC Davis looks better than Montana right now. And obviously, they're going to play on ESPN2 this year. That'll be one of the really good games in the Big Sky Conference. That'll have a lot of eyes on it. That's going to be a really, really good game. So pay attention to that game, but currently right now, Montana's at number 3. At number 4, I moved Idaho down. Now, Idaho did get the loss against UC Davis, but Idaho didn't look terrible. I mean, their defense still looked like their I don't know, man. I mean, we'll see. They obviously lost against UC Davis, and, their chances for a Big Sky Conference championship might be out the window. We don't know. We'll have to wait and see until we see if a team goes undefeated in the Big Sky Conference, but Idaho does not look like a terrible team. They have a quarterback problem, but outside of their quarterback issues, I think they're a good team offensively. I think they're a good team. They're definitely a good team defensively. They might have some holes here and there defensively, but, UC Davis made the plays when they were given to them, and Idaho had 3 turnovers. You can't win with 3 turnovers. You got to take care of the football. That's definitely concerning from Idaho, but they're number 4 right now. At number 5, I have Northern Arizona. Northern Arizona looked really good against Sac State. Now, do I think they looked amazing offensively? No, I do not. Do I think they looked good enough offensively? Yeah, they made the plays when they had to. When they had to move the ball, they did. Their defense stepped up and made plays for them. 2 turnovers, big turnovers, 1 on an interception that almost ended up being a touchdown. They scored on the next play, and then 1 on a sack fumble that was a touchdown. That sack fumble caused by Alex McLaughlin. Northern Arizona was bringing a ton of pressure for Sac State. Sac State was under duress the whole game. Northern Arizona looked good yesterday. I would love to see a little bit more offensive firepower for them, from them, to see if they get moved up or anything. But, they're going to play Idaho this week, so that's going to be a really good game in the Kibbie Dome. Probably one of the top games in the Big Sky Conference for me coming into this week. They're at number 5. At number 6, we have Weber State. Now, Weber State has looked good. Have they looked great? No, they just lost to McNeese State. I know McNeese is a pretty good team. I know you're thinking, dang, how are they above Sac State, Eastern Washington? I mean, everybody everybody below Weber State has not looked great from any stretch. So, I mean, it gets pretty bad in the Big Sky Conference after you're talking about this top 5, top 6. Now, obviously, Weber State did not play a conference game. They're 1-0 in conference because they did beat Portland State. We will see how Weber State shakes out. They have Montana this week, so that could be a pretty decent game. Montana plays that at home. I think Montana should win that game pretty handedly, but it's going to be interesting to see how things shake out. It's going to be very interesting to see how things shake out, but Weber State is at 6. At number 7, I got Sac State. So they didn't slide down super low. I mean, I couldn't put Sac State any lower than that. I honestly probably could have justified putting Sac State at 6. I decided to put them at 7. That loss looked ugly. They're 0-1 in conference. Weber State is 1-0 in conference. So I got to be fair from that standpoint. But everybody, like I said, everybody below Weber State has not looked good. Sac State is at 7. I don't think they looked great. I was very interested to see how they looked when they played against Big Sky competition. They got their 2 wins against Nichols and Texas A&M Commerce. Their 2 losses are against San Jose State and Fresno State, so those are to be expected. They played those games pretty close. I'd say they played those games pretty close. But I mean, they looked terrible against NAU. Terrible. I mean, the quarterback was under pressure, putting the ball in harm's way over and over again. I need to see more from Sac State if they want to have a potential of moving up. They're at number 7. At number 8, you got Eastern Washington. They're 1-4, but I mean, honestly, in comparison to everybody else who's below them, I think they would beat everybody else below them. And who I have below them is at number 9, I have Idaho State. At number 10, I have Cal Poly. At number 11, I have Portland State. And at number 12, I have Northern Colorado. What do you guys think about my Big Sky poll? I'll go through it one more time. At 1, we have Montana State. At 2, we have UC Davis. At 3, we have Montana. At 4, we have Idaho. At 5, we have Northern Arizona. At 6, we have Weber State. At 7, I have Sac State. At 8, I have Eastern Washington. At 9, I have Idaho State. At 10, I have Cal Poly. 11, I have Portland State. And 12, I have Northern Colorado. I think this is a pretty fair ranking. I think maybe Weber State, Sac State could have been moved, but everybody else, I think this is a solid ranking. This might be like an A-plus list, an A-plus power ranking for this week. Like I mentioned, this list is going to be fluid. It's going to move around every week. I don't think any teams besides Montana State and Montana have been in the same spot every week. And maybe Northern Colorado, they've been last every time I've done it. But outside of that, it's been pretty fluid. Teams have moved around. They've went up. They've went down. UC Davis obviously was down. They were at 5. I had honestly moved UC Davis down after the Southern Utah game. And I can't remember. They might have had a bye. I can't remember who they played the next week. But I didn't think UC Davis had looked great. I moved them down to 5. Sac State was at 4. Sac State loses. Now Sac State's at 7. UC Davis is at number 2. So, I mean, win the games that are in front of you. Look impressive. NAU could be number 2 next week. Who knows? Depending on how they look against Idaho, we will see. But that, man, I can't stop thinking about that NAU Idaho game. It's going to be a really good game. Really excited to see that. You guys let me know what you think about my Big Sky power rankings going into week 6, following week 5, and I will move on. Okay. Last but not least, we are going to preview the games happening in the Big Sky Conference in week 6. In week 6. Why does this still show week 5? Here we go. Week 6. Okay. There's some bye weeks going on this week. There's only 5 games going on in the Big Sky Conference. Who's got a bye week this week? Who's got a bye week? I don't know. Why am I doing that? Anyway, on Saturday, October 5th, there are 5 Big Sky games happening. I remember when it was non-conference play, and I was previewing like 12 games, 11 games every week. That was exhausting. We got 5 games to preview this week. At number 1, we got Weber State against Montana. That game is being played at 1 p.m. in Montana, Missoula, Montana, in Washington Grizzly Stadium. Weber State comes over. I think the last time Weber State was in Missoula was probably 2019. Yeah, because did they play Weber State in 2020? We didn't play Weber State in 2021. I don't remember. I think they played Weber State in 2022, but I think they probably would have went to Ogden. And then they didn't play in 2023. So 2024, I can't remember the last time these two teams played. Somebody remind me in the comments when's the last time Montana and Weber. I think it's 2019. I think it's 2019 because I know we didn't play them in 21. If it did happen, it was in 2022. But you guys can let me know in the comments. 4-1 Montana goes host 2-3 Weber State. I think Montana should win this game. I feel confident in saying Montana should win this game, but obviously you don't know. I mean, anything could happen. Anything could happen. They're at home. Montana usually plays really good at home. They got some really good offensive pieces looking really good for Montana. But, you know, Weber State has a really good running back in Bankston. Richie Munoz is looking like a pretty good quarterback, but they're 2-3. So their 2 wins have came against, who have they come against? Northwestern State. They lost a close one to Lamar and Portland State. So Weber State hasn't really won any marquee games. Their one ranked matchup against Lamar, they lost that. And then McNeese, they played McNeese. I think McNeese should be working their way into a ranking potentially. I don't think they're ranked right now. They didn't win any games last year, but they're 4-2. One of those losses come to an FBS opponent and a close loss to Tarleton to start the season. Clifton McDowell has McNeese playing really well. We're not talking about McNeese right now. We're talking about Montana and Weber State. But Montana, Weber State, I would pick Montana to win that game by probably 2 scores. I got to believe they're probably going to be favored by 2 or 3 scores. I would say, I mean, they were favored by Eastern Washington by 16. They were favored by Western Carolina by 2 scores. They might be favored by Weber State by 3 or 4 scores, honestly. Like, that might be like a 20 to 30 point spread if I had to guess. But Montana State should win that game. Montana should win that game pretty handedly. I would say they moved to 2-0 after Weber State. But obviously, the game is going to be played on Saturday, so just because I say it doesn't mean it's going to happen. Montana has to go out there and play, and their defense definitely has to look better. I mean, the truth of the matter is anybody can really be in a game with Montana with the way their defense is playing right now. And I'm not trying to bash or pile on Montana's defense right now, but they have not looked great. 49 points and 35 points last week is not great. That doesn't look great. You definitely got to play better defense than that. Unless you plan on putting up 60 and outscoring most of these teams, you got to play better defense than that if you plan to be a team that goes deep in the playoffs. Their defense carried them last year, and I personally think any team can hang in there with Montana with the way their defense is playing. I mean, if you can't stop anybody, you can't do anything. You got to be able to get stops consistently over and over and over, and Montana has not been able to do that up to this point. But Weber State, Montana, that should be a pretty good game. I would pick Montana to win that by at least 2 scores. Even if their defense doesn't play great, I would say 2 scores. But that game is going to be played at 1 p.m. on ESPN Plus on Saturday. I will not be at that game. I won't be on the pregame, postgame show. And I don't know if I'll be able to do a breakdown. I'll be back home. My brother's wedding is on Saturday. I'm a groomsman in the wedding. So, sorry about that, y'all, but I won't be at that game. Yeah, tough. Next, you got Northern Colorado, Montana State. Montana State should win this game by 50. I'm sure the spread will probably be around 40 or 50. That game is being played in Bozeman, Montana. Montana's 5-0. Northern Colorado's 0-5. That game is going to be played at 2 p.m. on ESPN Plus. I don't think I really need to say much about this game. Montana State should win that game very handedly. It shouldn't be a tough game for Montana State to win. They should handle Northern Colorado. They should win by a bunch. They should look very clean. They should honestly rest their players. They should, get it in the second quarter, and then not even play their guys in the second half. If it works out that way, who knows? Northern Colorado might come out and play hard, but they usually don't. They're not a great opponent. They're not good for the Big Sky Conference, really. If you let Coulter tell it, Coulter doesn't think Northern Colorado is a great team for the Big Sky Conference because they don't compete at all. It's not a good look if a team is an automatic win. And I'm regurgitating exactly what I've heard from Coulter. He's taught me a ton about the Big Sky Conference. He's taught me a ton about the inner workings of the history of this Big Sky Conference. It's not a good look if a team is an automatic win, and when you really think about it, it's not. That doesn't look good for the conference. If everybody knows they're going to get a dub, it looks terrible for the conference. That means, there's not a lot of competitiveness coming from that school. Coulter personally doesn't even think there should be an FCS team. He definitely doesn't think they're a Big Sky team. Maybe if they were in the United Athletic Conference, they might compete. But if you look at that United Athletic Conference, they look pretty dang good this year. I think Tarleton snuck away with a win yesterday, but they played in a close one. And then UCA, Central Arkansas, looks really, really good. They're ranked 7th in the country right now. They look great. Either way, Northern Colorado, Montana State, tune into that game if you want. I wouldn't recommend tuning into that game. It's probably not going to be a super, super exciting game, but take that for what it is. Next, you got UC Davis at Portland State. That game is going to be played at 2 p.m. on ESPN+. UC Davis is 4-1. Portland State is 0-4. Obviously, they had that forfeited win. Well, they had the game canceled. It's not going to get rescheduled, but they had that game canceled against South Dakota. South Dakota looks really, really good. It's honestly probably good for Portland State that they didn't play that game. But, South Dakota, UC Davis, Portland State in Portland, Oregon. I would say UC Davis should win that game by 2 or 3 scores. Portland State does not look that strong this year. They've had a gauntlet of a schedule. They've had a really, really tough schedule. But for them, right now, it's not looking strong for them. They might go 0 for this year. They have a really good quarterback. He was on a couple of watch lists, but without any weapons or pieces around him, what is he supposed to do? I don't know. But UC Davis should win that game by 2 or 3 scores, maybe 4 or 5 scores. Same thing I said about Montana State, Northern Colorado. UC Davis should work it out, get their starters in the first half, and hopefully if everything goes smoothly, your starters shouldn't play the second half. Maybe a little bit in the third quarter, but your starters shouldn't play most of the second half. Keep everybody healthy, play a clean game, look good, and run up the score. UC Davis, Portland State, 2 p.m. in Portland, Oregon, on ESPN+. Next, my game of the week. And if I had to pick my 2 games of the week, it's looking scarce out here. It's looking really, really scarce out here. And as I'm looking at this, I'm trying to think of the teams that aren't playing this week. I can't get it out my head. Eastern Washington's not playing this week. Okay. Eastern Washington is not playing this week, and Sacramento State's not playing this week. Okay. Either way, Northern Arizona, Idaho. This is the game of the week in the Big Sky Conference, and they're both 3-2. It's going to be played in the Kibbie Dome at 3 p.m. on ESPN+. That's a game to watch. That's a game to keep your eyes on. I think it could be a really, really good game for Northern Arizona. It could be a really, really good game for Idaho. We will see how this game turns out. That game is obviously playing in the Kibbie Dome. Northern Arizona plays in a dome. Idaho plays in a dome. It's the best game happening in the Big Sky Conference. It's pretty scarce out here in the Big Sky Conference the next week, but the heat will get turned up in a couple of weeks as some of these teams start to play some of these tougher games. But Idaho, Northern Arizona, that's a game to keep your eyes watched on. Obviously, Idaho just lost to UC Davis. Obviously, Northern Arizona just beat Sac State. So Sac State was ranked. Idaho was ranked number 4 in the country. So UC Davis got a ranked win over Idaho. So Idaho's looking to bounce back. Northern Arizona got a ranked win at Sac State. So they're looking to carry their momentum through. Obviously, they're on the road. We'll see how Idaho plays in the Kibbie Dome. I think I've mentioned it multiple times in this video. I think Idaho has a quarterback problem. I'll be interested to see how they're able to turn up the heat after now moving to their third-string quarterback. Does their third-string quarterback still play in this game? Who knows? But I think Idaho needs to get some things figured out. Does Idaho still play their third-string quarterback? Did I say UC Davis? Does Idaho still play their third-string quarterback? I don't know, but that's something they need to get solved ASAP. They turned over the ball at a high rate. That's what I think lost in the game. 3-1 in the turnover battle. I think that lost Idaho the game. Northern Arizona was 2-3 in the turnover battle against, I think they might have been 2-2. I don't know. Either way, Northern Arizona, if I had to pick somebody to win this game, I'm going to go on a whim and say Northern Arizona wins the game on the road against Idaho. They're going to win, and I'll say it's a very close game, a 1-score game, but I'm going to pick Northern Arizona to beat Idaho on the road. Hopefully Idaho proves me wrong. Hopefully Northern Arizona proves me right. I don't care either way. I just want to see a good game. But I'm going to pick Northern Arizona to win on the road in the Kibbie Dome to go 2-0 in conference and to carry their momentum over. What do you guys think about that game? Last game of the day. That'll be played in a night game. There might not be a lot of eyes on this game. Idaho State at Cal Poly in San Luis Obispo, California. Idaho State is 2-3. Cal Poly is 2-2. Yeah, that game's going to be played 6 p.m. on ESPN+. I haven't really watched either of these teams play. If I had to pick a team to win this game, I'd probably say Idaho State. Idaho State is pretty good on the offensive end of things. They weren't great against Montana State, but Montana State's a really good team. But yeah, Idaho State, I think, should win this game by maybe 1 or 2 scores. It might honestly be a really, really close game. For the Big Sky's sake, I hope it's a close game. I hope it's a very competitive game. But Idaho State, Cal Poly, tune into that game if you guys want. My 2 top games of the Big Sky Conference this week: Arizona versus Idaho and Montana at Weber State. Obviously, Montana's at home. Weber State's 2-3. I think Montana should win that game. They're probably going to be heavily favored, but that could be a pretty decent game given how Montana's defense has been playing. That could end up being a really close game. And then Northern Arizona at Idaho. That's going to be the game of the week in the Big Sky Conference. Northern Arizona probably won't be ranked. They only beat Sac State, so that might not give them a ranking yet. They might get some votes this week, but I don't see them being ranked. I think Idaho will still be ranked. They were number 4 in the country. I can't believe they drop out, but they'll probably be between 10 and 15 after losing. But Northern Arizona, Idaho, that's going to be the best game to watch. 3 p.m. ESPN Plus, Kibbe Dome in Idaho. It's going to be a really exciting game to watch. You guys let me know what you guys think about all these games in the Big Sky Conference. What is a game that you have your eyes locked on? Let me know what you guys are keeping your eyes on. And I will move
Five
on.
Valleys Restoration, your view is our view. And what a beautiful view it is. We are proud to be locally owned, locally operated. We love our community here in Missoula and also the full 5 valleys that we do service. We give back to the community, we service our community. Our kids go to school here, we live here, we play here, and we love it.
Okay. I want to thank you guys for tapping in this week. I appreciate you guys for continuing to watch my channel. I appreciate you guys for continuing to view the content. Make sure you guys hit the subscribe button. Make sure you guys hit the like button. Make sure you guys leave me a comment down below of what you guys appreciated from this video. What do you guys want to see me improve? What could I be better at? I'm always looking to improve. Let me know in the comments and I will try to fix it for you. I'll try to add some segments if you guys want me to talk about something different every week. I'm trying to create a consistent schedule of what I talk about during the season now because, I was kind of jumping topics around during the off season, but now that it's season time, I try to give you guys a consistent flow of you guys knowing what I'm going to talk about every week. Maybe I can add some more fun segments or something. You guys let me know in the comments. Let me know what you guys think. Like I mentioned, I won't be covering any of the Big Sky this weekend because I'll be at a wedding on Saturday, so that'll be taking up all of my time on Saturday. If I can, I'm going to try to do a breakdown on Saturday. I'm going to try to do a breakdown next week. It might be a little later in the week that it comes out because I don't get back to Montana till Monday. But I'm going to try to get a breakdown potentially if I can. No promises there, but please go check out. I did an Idaho versus UC Davis breakdown. I did a Sac State versus Northern Arizona breakdown, and I did a Montana versus Eastern Washington breakdown. Make sure you guys go check all 3 of those out. Really good games that were played in the Big Sky Conference. The Big Sky Conference is looking competitive right now. Good football being played all around. You guys let me know what you guys think. Make sure you guys hit the subscribe button. I mention it every week. Subscribe. I'm chasing 1,500 subscribers, really chasing 2,000 subscribers. Hope I can get to 2,000 subscribers by the end of the season, but help me get to 2,000 subscribers. That would be amazing. Tell your friends, tell your mom, tell your aunt, tell your cousin, tell anybody you know to come follow your boy, come subscribe to the channel. I appreciate you guys for tapping in. I will catch you guys next time. See ya later.